County Board to her allegiance in a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Roll call shows 3 supervisors absent. Supervisor Steele, Supervisor Seidlitz, Supervisor Teuteberg.
Any members of the public wishing to be heard? Excuse me. Approval of agenda. Okay, seek a motion to approve the agenda.
Later, so moves.
Is there a second? Bromer? Okay. Bromer. Any discussion? Green to approve, red to disapprove. Okay. Roger, yours didn't record? Okay.
18 yes, 0 no.
Okay, agenda is approved. Members of the public wishing to be heard, do we have any tonight? Okay. Then we'll move to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Hunt, motion to approve?
Okay, Hunt, and a second?
Visual second.
Official. Any discussion? Ready? Okay. Green to approve, red to disapprove.
Glenn.
Okay.
18 yes, 0 no.
Okay, agenda is approved. Move on to reports, County Administrator review and update, investment update from Institutional Capital Management, Bob Moore and Randy.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just introduce Bob. So Bob's been our investor, been doing our investments for us since 2013. He's going to come up and give a presentation if the technology works, hopefully. You can hear something called unrealized losses. If you've been paying attention to the news, that's kind of all over the place and is affecting many institutions, including our own. So Bob, if you want to come up and so hopefully get the IT working.
Don't I go there? That way we don't have to. Okay, and so I'm right to go up one and left to go back one? Yep. How about that? I think I can handle that. Okay. So my name is Bob Moore. Pleasure to see all of you. Lots of new faces, especially since COVID. It's nice to see faces. That's always a good thing. I'm the president of Institutional Capital Management. I started the company in '97. Been at it for 26 years. Chippewa County has been a client for 10. I work exclusively with public funds investors. I've been asked to come and speak to you about the current market values of the portfolio. I'll share a little bit of information with you about economic and policy conditions. They're very complex right now. They're very unique right now. I'm going to provide you with an executive summary and leave about 5 minutes for questions at the end. So my objective here is to give you an overview and to use the Q&A portion to allow us to drill down into topics that you want to know a little more about. And I hope to be out of your hair within 20 minutes. So that was what I was told to do, and that is my goal. So here's the outline I'm going to follow. I put it all in question form. Why have portfolio market values declined? How do market interest rates affect bond prices? What is an unrealized loss, the topic of the evening? How does Federal Reserve policy amplify risk? Portfolio market values, will they recover? And then we'll get to your questions. And if that sounds okay, I'll get going. All right. Bond prices and interest rates. There is an inverse relationship between interest rates and bond prices. They move in opposite directions. So when you see interest rates rising, as we have seen for the last year, you also see the value of many assets decline, bonds decline in value. So think of that like a teeter-totter. As you see interest rates go up, prices go down, and vice versa. And this is the crux of what we're going to talk about here. Very next page. Market values, your market values, represent unrealized losses. So what you see here is an example that I put together using a $14 million portfolio. When we purchase that $14 million portfolio, we buy the bonds at 100 cents on the dollar, or what is called in the vernacular of bonds, at par. Okay? 100 cents on the dollar. Now, keeping in mind that inverse relationship between interest rates and bond prices we talked about, what you see in that first triangle to the left in green is a scenario where interest rates have dropped and bond prices are going up, and that $14 million portfolio in this example has increased in value by $1.4 million. That is an unrealized gain. As we continue moving from left to right, interest rates are going up. And what we see is price decline. And in red, we see $1.4 million in an unrealized loss. The most important thing on this page, if you look at the blue line that runs horizontally through the center, we bought $14 million in bonds. When they mature, they come in at 100 cents on the dollar, $14 million. Okay? What goes on between the day we buy them and the day they mature is all unrealized gain or loss, unless we sell a bond before its maturity. As long as we hold our bonds to maturity, we will get back 100 cents on the dollar. Okay, that's the most important thing I want to leave with you. I want to make sure we're clear. Did I do a good job with that? You understand where I'm coming from? Okay. If you've ever wondered how we come to build a portfolio the way we do, what maturities we choose, et cetera, this is very important information. To understand the reasoning behind portfolio construction, we have to understand what's going on in the interest rate market and the economy at the time of the purchase. I'm going to begin with the concept of forward guidance, something you may or may not have heard of, but here's the drill. In forward guidance, the Federal Reserve, our central bank, communicates what they are intending to do in the marketplace. What are they going to do with interest rates? They control short-term interest rates through their policy. And back in the day, if you remember Alan Greenspan, he never whispered a word. You never knew what the heck he was going to do. But once we had the financial crisis, the central bankers decided it was very, very important to let the markets know exactly what they were going to do, and they wanted the markets to know what they were going to do in the future. And they assumed that this would give them the biggest bang for their buck. They would tell people what was coming. How do they do forward guidance? They communicate their intent to optimize policy impact. They speak at conferences. They do interviews. They give speeches. And one other thing they do is called the dot plot. And that's what we're looking at here. Now, when you look at that graph on the left side, we have the implied Fed funds target rate. Starts at 0, goes on up to 3%. As we look across the bottom of the page, those are years, 2020, 21, 22, 23, and longer term. And the meeting date is highlighted for a reason. That meeting date in yellow that you see toward the top left, 9/16/20, is the date that they published these dots, the dot plot. All it means is the group of guys who are members of the Federal Open Market Committee that set interest rate policy sit down and forecast where they see interest rates going. This is a relatively new thing that they do. It's been probably 4 years in the making. And now what you see across the bottom, those blue dots, they represent within the year and to year end where the individual members of that FOMC, the guys who set policy rates, see interest rates at the end of the year. And if you look at 2020, you see every one of the members has interest rates at 0 until the end of 2020. They do the same through 2021 and 2022 and through 2023. And in every one of their channels of forward guidance, what they were communicating to the world, to us as investors, was that they were going to hold interest rates low through the end of 2023. They would continue to hold interest rates near 0 and continue to do what is called quantitative easing, where they went into the open marketplace and bought securities. So the Fed went into the open market to buy bonds in order to jack up their prices and push down their yields. So they were doing everything in their power and communicating every step of the way with us that they intended to do the same things through the end of at least 2023 before they began to tighten interest rates or to even begin to resolve that quantitative easing that they were doing. Okay? This is a real important thing to understand because it had a tremendous influence on how the portfolio was constructed, with the expectation that this is what they were going to do. So if we look at the very next page, our portfolio maturity dispersion, what does that mean? All it means is how to put the portfolio together. And why did I do it the way I did it? Well, if what you look at here, again, left-hand side of the page, we go from 0 up to 1.8 million, and we go across the years 22, 23, on out to 27. And what we see is that during a period of time, ZIRP stands for Zero Interest Rate Policy, ZIRP. All right, that acronym. And what you'll see here is that during the time that the Fed told us they were going to keep interest rates at 0, we scheduled 0 maturities. Why bother have money coming in when we'd reinvest it at 0? And if you notice, the very first time that you see one of those blue columns is in 2024, August of, 2024 to be exact. And there's a purpose for that. The Fed was going to begin raising interest rates according to their forward guidance. And generally speaking, and we'll see a slide in just a minute, they take their sweet time about pushing interest rates up. They want to be cautious and careful. They don't want to disrupt the economy. They don't want to cause financial trouble. So we invested according to the things they told us. We started to put money into the market 2024, you see throughout that year, with the bulk of it coming in 2025. Now, when you think about how the Fed progresses with interest rates, they do a series of increases over time. So as they would be raising and getting close to their peak interest rates, we would have most of our money coming to maturity so that we could invest and get higher interest earnings. And there's one other quick thing to keep in mind. When the Fed was sitting on their ZIRP zero interest rate policy. $1 million in a 2-year treasury would make you $1,400 a year in interest earnings. That's 14/100ths of 1% rate of return. We pushed the maturities out a bit, not only in an attempt to catch the peak in interest rates, but to earn a higher return. So rather than 14 basis points, the portfolio was earning about 0.75%, 4 times as much. So there was some logic behind how it got put together. And now I'll show you how logic gets destroyed. Here we go. Fed funds and a 2-year treasury yield. Here's what we're looking at across the bottom, 2007-8. You will recall something happened in the financial markets. I think it was a small hiccup. And then they dropped interest rates to 0 for 7 straight years. Interest rates running up the right side. 7 continuous years of 0 interest rates and quantitative easing. And in fact, if you run from 2007 through current, 9 of 13 years, interest rates were at 0. And the Fed was practicing quantitative easing. But here's what's important. We go through 7 years of 0, and the Federal Reserve decides, hey, you know what? Let's try and normalize interest rates a little bit. Let's see what we can do here. And so they raise interest rates 25 basis points, 0.25%. And they're so shy about it that they let it sit there for 1 year to see what the impact might be. Nothing happened, nothing collapsed, nothing broke. After a year, they raised them again, 0.25 point. And they did so 3 more times. And then they took another step back and they paused for 6 months just to see. They took interest rates from 0 to a little over 1%, and they wanted to see what was going to happen. Because quite frankly, over the course of 7 years, when you keep interest rates at 0, banks adjust how they do business. Everyone adjusts how they do business because they can borrow money for nothing. So we became very finance-driven in the growth of our economy. One other thing I want you to see. They took 3 years to move interest rates from 0 to 2.5. 3 years. And you see the black line? That's the 2-year Treasury yield. The red one is Fed funds. The reason I'm showing you both is the market, if 2-year Treasury yield market, follows the Fed and sometimes leads the Fed. And what you will see once we get up to where you see the little 6-month hiatus there where they took their break, see the black line breaks up faster than the Fed funds line. The market is leading higher. They're saying, okay, we believe you. You're going to keep taking interest rates higher. That's what you're telling us. That's what you're going to do. And now we're talking 2016, 17, and 18. But do you see that they continue to raise rates after the 2-year Treasury? That black line reaches its peak. The market is now telling the Fed, you guys have gone too far. The stock market starts to crack. That's when the Fed gets nervous. When asset values start to drop, that's when they get nervous. They sit for a while, and then they begin a series of cuts in 2019 because the economy is weakening and so are the markets. Then COVID hits in 2020, they go back to 0, and they sit there for 2 years. And at that point in time, because of COVID, we have a number of issues that arise, supply chain, et cetera, and huge amounts of stimulus poured into an economy when people are locked in their houses. What do you think happens when they get to go out? They spend every little penny they can, and they have some fun. And that pushes prices up. So we get a bit of inflation. The Fed says it's transitory. Don't worry about it. We're going to keep policy at 0. We're going to keep doing what we've been doing. And if you look, get all the way to 2022, the very beginning, and then everything they said in the past, all the forward guidance, that goes out the window. Because now they're in panic mode. They've got inflation. They haven't seen it for 15, 20 years. They don't know what to do. And they start raising interest rates. But they don't do it like they did in 2016, 17, and 18. They do it in a panic, and they do it in big jumps. And if you look, I've got it as of 4/24, the date 4/24/23 follows the year of the word yields. 4/24/23 is the day I put this graph together. Well, they raised them again since then. Interest rates went from 0 to 5.25 in a little over a year. They took 3 years to get you to 2.5. 3. They took 1 year to get you to 5.25. The interest rate shock for businesses, for banks, et cetera, and for those of us with fixed income portfolios is tremendous. And here's why. We were doing business together starting in 2013. We got all the way to 16, and then the Fed started their tightening cycle. But the portfolio held up just fine because they did it slowly, thoughtfully, and gave us a chance to make adjustments in the portfolio holdings. What they did this time around was they jacked interest rates up 500 basis points in 1 year. No time to adjust. Serious beating all around for everybody that owned fixed income bonds. So a huge amount of increase. Is that pretty clear? I try to make good pictures. Generally, that sticks more than the words. All right, so we've got an inverted treasury curve. What the hell does that mean? It means that short maturity yields are higher than long maturity yields. What you're seeing in that graph, interest rates up the left side, and from 1 month on out to 30-year maturities in the treasury market, and that graph line follows where those yields are. And if you take a look, 3-month treasury bill yields are highlighted in yellow and circled along the bottom of the page that you have. They were over 5% for 3 months. They're up to 5.20 today. And look what happens as you move out the maturity curve going from left to right. Yields plummet. That's an inverted yield curve. What it's telling the Fed is, slow down. You went too far. You went too fast. And here's what we're seeing in the future for interest rates. They're going to be a heck of a lot lower where you have them right now. It is also a reflection of a policy blunder. They know the Fed made a mistake, and the guys in the market are saying, you may control these short-term interest rates, but we control the market from there on out. And they have moved their interest rates significantly lower. The 10-year Treasury on that particular day, 3.41 for 10 years versus 5.20 for 3 months. Significant difference. It indicates one thing to bond guys like me. Recession. It's what they're all about. They're trying. It is their goal to give us one. That's their gift. And we're seeing the impact in your portfolio. And if you watch the news, you're seeing it in the banking sector right now. So flip the page. Fed policy creates banking system stress. And before I forget, I didn't put it in your notes, but I think probably commercial real estate is going to be following what we're seeing in banks. And unfortunately, because our local bankers tend to do most of the lending, medium-sized banks, small, medium, for commercial real estate, that may be where we see some of the hiccups going forward. So what I consider to be the canaries in the financial coal mine, we just saw 4 banks go. And they're big banks, multi-billion-dollar banks. Silicon Valley, Signature Bank, First Republic, Credit Suisse, all had to be taken over. Why? Because they had portfolios that the Fed crushed, and that's their capital base. And the capital base determines how much money they can lend. So in order to be able to meet the liquidity needs that they had as bankers to make loans and to meet withdrawals, they had to sell securities. So SVB in particular, Silicon Valley Bank, went out and they did sell some bonds. And they took a huge hit of about $100 million. Now, they're a multi-billion-dollar bank, so that's not a huge amount, but it was enough to scare the heck out of everybody who had deposits in that bank. And in the world where we can pick up our phone and pull our money from the bank, and SVB, Silicon Valley, tells you what their client base was, tech company. Nobody can get their money out of a bank faster than a tech company. And they all are connected and all moved synchrony. So you had a very fast move. In a decade of ZIRP and QE, quantitative easing, zero interest rate policy, all the bankers got themselves stuck in portfolio, trying to make some money on the bonds that they had and still make money on the loans that they had. What you see here, forward guidance failure. The policy that you see today is designed to slow inflation by slowing the economy. It degrades portfolios. It's going to cause unemployment. Borrowing and spending are going to take a pretty big hit. You want to know what the solution was that the Fed and the Treasury gave to the banks? They're going to give them the opportunity to mark their bonds at par for capital purposes. So even though the value of their portfolios, as interest rates went up, went down, the Fed is saying to them, for capital reserve purposes, we'll bring you back whole. Be nice if they gave us that, but they won't. But they did do it here. Monetary policy works with a long and variable lag. If you've ever heard of Milton Friedman, it's one of his famous sayings. Bottom line is this. They raised rates so fast and so far, they're not going to know what they've accomplished for 18 months to 2 years. That's how big the lag is in monetary policy change. Okay? So you're going to see the effects of what is going on soon. And if we flip the page and I hit the right button, these are the things I'd like you to carry away from this. We talked about bond price, market interest rates, inverse relationship. Market values and unrealized losses. You're not going to lose money on your portfolio. We're going to hang on to it. And what's interesting is that if the Fed is successful in causing the recession and creating banking problems, their next steps are going to be to cut interest rates. So what that means is that all of these portfolios that have been beaten down are going to start to see prices return and come back up. So when we talk about will market values recover, they will recover in coordination with the Fed pushing interest rates back down through this cycle. And that's what I wanted to share with you. I want you to understand that this is being done by design. This is the purpose of the policy, is to create financial disruption. It's to make it more expensive to borrow money for a finance-driven economy. They want to make it more difficult to get a loan. And they have begun to see what I believe is the tip of the iceberg in the banking sector, and that they're going to cause other problems as we move forward. So I think I'm pretty good with time. And so I'm going to wrap it there. If there's anything that you would like to ask, we can try and clarify. And also, you have my email. If you want to send questions, I'll write back and answer them. But for now, if you like, I'd be happy to try and clarify anything that I talked about.
Any questions? Jason?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Curiosity question on the Fed dot plots. The last published date was there in 2020. What has been their guidance on the frequency that they're going to publish that, and when do you anticipate some of that coming again to get a better?
A couple times a year they do it.
Oh, they do.
Oh, and right now, if you compared the current dot plot to the one that they had out there in 2020, you wouldn't even recognize it. Because now what they were showing us was 2022, 23, 0. If you looked at it now, 2022, we're up to 5.25. And instead of us seeing the highest interest rates after 24, they show them coming back down again in 2024. So when you wonder why the Fed's credibility is out the window, they've created a lot of headaches for themselves. Good question.
Any other questions?
All right, I was either really boring or I nailed it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Move on to number 2, update on request to utilize opioid funds. Or, excuse me. You're right. Yeah, we're right. 1, 2, here we got it. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Chair. If you remember, part of the procedure that you approved when we looked at opioid funds was to bring this back to the county board on what was presented for the 2024 budget. So you can see on top, you guys already approved the $125,000 for the jail, and then these are the 4 requests we received. We still got to do some deep diving like everything else in our world, unfortunately, to figure out what we can and can't spend it on. Has become, a maze with everything else, but we will work through that and then have these as part of the budget. If then it'll go through the policy committees and obviously come through the budget process. So this is part of the requests or the requirement for the opioid spending the opioid. You can see the opioid available funding December 31st, 2022 is $330,000. So that's what we currently have. Any questions?
Any question? None. Okay. Then we'll move on to department reports and financial update. Lori?
All righty. So it's going to be a little lengthy because we are doing a year and quarter here. So we're first going to talk about 2022, and then we're going to talk about first quarter of 2023, and they're all pre-audited because auditors will be coming next week to start our 2022. Our definitions, we've discussed these definitions before, but I just always leave them in there for your review. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me with any questions. All right, so we're going to start with 2022 pre-audited financial results. Let's see here. Next one. So remember that when we're looking at this report, that it includes lapsing and non-lapsing accounts. So the first one we'll talk about is the general county. The loss reflects year-end transfer to the fund, the deficit in the human services. That's Fund 208 for $465,000. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit when I get to Fund 208. The next one we'll talk about is the county treasurer. That's an annual, what Bob had just talked about, with that annual required evaluation to market for our investments, and it caused an unrealized loss of about $1.3 million. And so the total that we have to show on our books is almost 1.7 because we had a little over $300,000 loss at the end of last year. Any questions before I go on about that? Okay. The sheriff, actually, you're going to see that they're in the hole there at the right side. They used $820,364 of non-lapsing balance for the radio tower project. The one division to telecommunications, we were short-staffed, causing large amounts of overtime for a loss of $95,986. If you remember, at the end of last year, we ended up changing the grade level due to these staffing issues to adjust more to market. Randy had sent a letter out to everybody, I believe. In the jail, we have a loss of $188,962. It's partially due to the revenue shortage with the boarding of prisoners for other departments, or other governments, I'm sorry. Also, food and supplies are seeing large increases also. So just for an example, our food contract alone increased 27% starting in June last year. So they're not free. Okay, so I'm always telling you the negative. Here's a positive. Land conservation. You're going to see they had given a large amount over there. The large portion is due to the stumpage revenues. They were actually $484,446 more than budget. And a lot had to do with that right when COVID happened, our county forester, Matt, in lack of a better word, he went and, sorry, I couldn't come up with a job title right off the top of my head. He went and reevaluated a lot of the contracts with the loggers. So then they ended up having new contracts, which helped us in the long run. So that's really, if you'll remember a couple years ago, we had some losses. So this is just kind of coming up and helping us in the backside for it. And there were also savings in other areas of the Land Conservation Department. These are just highlights that I've always shown before, but this time for year end, I wanted to actually show a little bit about each department. I mean, please read them at your leisure. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions and you want more information about a department. I don't mind at all. So these are all general fund departments. So then we come to where it gets a little more confusing. So we're getting ready to close, and so before any transfers, our unassigned general fund balance would have decreased by $210,729. If you recall, part of it is due to that $1.3 million because of that unrealized loss with the treasurers, with the investments. To be in compliance with the fund balance policy that was adopted in 2019, we transferred an additional $356,524.26 over into the general fund. So you'll see over on the left, those are going to be your general fund transfers for the non-lapsing accounts. You know, so like county administrator, et cetera. And over on the right-hand side is other actual funds that reached their maximum for the fund balance policy. And between the two, it came up with that $356,000 figure. So if you, I'm sorry, I lost myself. Okay. Based on the previous slide's transfers, then, our unassigned fund balance would have increased by $145,795. But we needed to account for that negative fund balance in the Department of Human Services fund for Fund 208. So the county administrator approved transfers of $465,000 to help offset this current year's loss. If you recall, I think it's been at least 2 or 3 years that we've been having this issue. It's because of these out-of-home placements that are very expensive, and the Institute of Mental Health, for mental disease, I should say. So with these transfers, the net decrease to the unassigned general fund balance will be $319,205. If you remember, Randy and I are always telling you guys we want to maintain a positive increase to that unassigned fund balance. But in this case, we have no control because of that investment to market issue with that $1.3 million. We just couldn't recover that. And also the DHS thing. And remember, this isn't a cash loss, it's a unrealized loss because it's not, you know, we didn't lose cash because if you recall, he said you're going to get 100% of what our investment is plus interest for those money that are in those bonds. Then we'll go over to special revenue funds. So remember, we're looking way over on the right side column for the actual gains and loss column. So public health actually had a net gain of $99,881.51, but it was transferred to the general fund due to the general fund policy. ADRC and aging actually had a net gain of $37,657.56, but that was also transferred to the general fund due to that policy. Land records actually had a net gain of $62,668.48, but $12,947.11 actually was transferred due to that fund balance policy. Human Services, we talked about that a little bit. They actually had a net loss of $461,255.76. But with that county administrator transfer of $465,000, it was made to maintain a positive balance. So you see that $3,744, that it's not going to give us much, but it helps us at least have a positive. RWC, we're still maintaining the working capital from the other counties that are part of it. And just a reminder down there at the bottom is the county economic development. That is actually for the revolving loan fund for businesses. That's usually used for gap funding purposes for businesses. And this is just some highlights about what we just discussed on that previous slide. And staying within the special revenue funds, we're going to talk about sales tax and COVID funding. You'll see over on the left-hand side that this is going to be the last time I include this in this presentation. Because if you recall, everything is like they're calling that the pandemic is being lifted on May 11th. So I will not be including those anymore. But instead, I'll be sharing a whole slide about sales tax. So it will show a little bigger there for you. So for 2022, we saw sales tax have an increase of 6.85% from 2021. And remember that in 2021, we had that 24.93% increase. And also, we've been doing really good in the interest income area in the investment pool. It's been coming along really well. So hopefully it keeps going. The opioid abatement account, which is another special revenue fund. Randy had just given you a report about that. So we have to show that we've earned interest of $1,749.66 in interest since we started receiving those funds in late July of last year. And we're only able to recognize the interest revenue since we didn't have any expense in order to recognize those other revenues from the Johnson & Johnson and those other distributors. Unearned revenues is considered a liability balance, meaning that if we don't earn those funds, by having expenses to offset whatever the special requirements of those funds are from, with that settlement, then we would have to pay them back. Or otherwise we have to do, there is some provision in there that it can be a small nominal amount, but there's special hoops we have to jump through. But so that's why we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, they're part of whatever the settlement agreement is. They are actually going to be qualified. So as you can see down at the bottom, that is your unearned revenues there. All right, the American Rescue Plan Act funds. We've earned $173,794.27 of interest in 2022. And it's very similar to the opioid funds. If we haven't spent it, it's considered unearned revenues. So we've pulled that back, just like last year I had to do the same thing. And just a reminder that with the ARPA plan, which you approved in July of last year, that has all of the funds allocated to projects. So that whole almost $12.6 million, that's allocated for projects between highway projects, I want to say rifle range, but the rifle range, park projects, so all those funds are allocated. Debt service funds, and I'm sure this is just old hat to you guys, but remember, this is where we have what our debt payments are for the year are in these funds, and they're always paid by sales tax. And over on the left-hand bottom graph, that is showing you the amount of obligation that we still have outstanding of $10,040,000. That includes the $3 million that we borrowed last fall. Capital projects, this funds are really only enacted when we borrow money and have bonding events, and the proceeds received for the bonds are in this account and are dispersed from this account to the department who has approved projects for the use of those bonds. And for those two, that would be highway projects. For the year-end report, I'll actually be splitting out the trust and enterprise funds into two different slides. And this is so you can get a little more information about the land development fund. I've included the normal two options for the sale of property. And remember, this is governed by an updated policy, which was adopted by the county board on March 8th of 2022. And also, you'll see way down at the bottom, it will show what our expected TIF payments will be from the city of Chippewa Falls for the businesses that we had developer agreements with. Internal service funds. Workers' comp. There was a large claim back in 2022, so it's causing this loss. If you recall, in previous years, we've always been ahead, so, we did expect, that's usually how those self-funded insurances, they ebb and flow. So we expected that coming up. Self-funded health insurance. This was the first full year of being a self-funded health insurance plan. And we're working with the auditors actually to find out what is the recommended percentage of total cost or claims that we should have in our fund balance. Currently, our fund balance is about at 47% of our 22 costs of that $6 million. But a lot of other counties that we've talked to, it's usually right around 60% is where it should be, and we're only at 47%. So we still have a ways to go, but I just wanted to let you know give that update. And here's our trust agency funds. And it's only the dog license fund, and we overpaid the municipalities on air, but we plan to recoup those funds in 2023 here. Any questions about 2022? Okay. I'm sorry if this is boring for you guys. Try to just say only main things. So here's for 2023. And I'm usually looking for expenses that are greater than 25% or revenues below 25%. That's just kind of a quick guideline of what I'm looking for. And in this one too, you'll see some departments will have percentages of 100%. That's because they're fully funded by tax levy, because the tax levy is actually dispersed at the beginning of the year for the whole year of tax levy. So the first one we'll talk about is the general county. State shared revenues, they're going to arrive in the fourth quarter. The county clerk, the expenses show 81.1 utilized, 81.1%, which is utilized, which is attributed to the annual libraries allocation of $1,001,886. And the county treasurer right now, we are seeing record rates for the funds at the state investment pool. I just did our April close, for our looking at what we had for the state investment pool. It was 4.8%, which is record. I've never seen anything like that before. So very great that way. And I'll tell you, I'm a little gun shy now with that unrealized loss that we recognized for the treasurer's office. Now for those investments, I'm actually going and accounting for that on a quarterly basis now, because in the past we've always done it on an annual basis. I'm going in and doing it quarterly, so we have more of a, see where we're heading. And the child support, they'll receive their quarterly state aid funding. And this is just a recap of the previous slide. I'm sure you all already read all this. Public health, ADRC, human services, their revenues are received 1 month later through the CAR system, which is a state aid system. And RWC actually shows quite a bit of a gain there, and it's only because we received a $5 million advance from the state for Medicaid revenues. All right, as promised, this slide is only about sales tax. You'll see that we actually are down a little bit on sales tax, but it's only 1 month of sales tax information in there. So hopefully it will come back around. Okay, opioid opioid abatement account. The only revenues there are the interest income that are sitting in the state investment pool. And also remember that in February, you guys approved with Resolution 9-23 funds for those true analyzers, narcotics analyzers for the Sheriff's Department. And we paid $118,220.64 for those in April, so they'll be on the next report. That's why I have them there over on the expenses side, but there's $0 there. American Rescue Plan Act funds, all revenue that we have in there currently is revenue for interest income. At the end of the year is when I'm actually going to show what other interest, I'll take it out of the unearned revenues and put it as revenue as we offset our expenses. Debt service funds, remember those are just our annual debt payments. And at the end of this year, our outstanding debt principal will be $8,450,000. Our capital projects funds, remember this is what we bonded, or the bonds that we had done last year in September. So of course we have budgeted $3 million for those. A lot of it had to do with the Cobbin Bridge. And the only interest that's in, or the only revenue that's in there is the interest from the state investment pool. Internal service funds. The only fund that I wanted to talk about on this one is our Fund 704. That is that self-funded liability insurance. You're going to see that we didn't have any revenue because we haven't done our insurance allocation, which is usually done towards the end of the year. And then we also paid our annual WMIC payments in January. So that it always shows like a double negative for you guys. So just wanted to show you guys. And here are the enterprise and trust agency funds. Not much activity there. Any questions? I know I went through fast, but.
Any questions? Okay.
Okay. Should I just go?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't want to
I thought you were all
bring
set.
where I wasn't supposed to go. Sorry. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the 2024 budget process. And this is the same slide presentation that I have given last year, so hopefully it will go pretty quick. So the first thing we're going to talk about, what is the purpose of a budget? The budget is the financial plan for the next year. We will be adopting the 2024 budget in 2023. A budget needs to comply with the state imposed levy limits when setting levy. And as a county board, you will levy the property taxes in 2023 for the 2024 budget. So there are 3 different phases of our current budget process. You have a department head requested, a county administrator proposed, and then once you guys approve it back in November, it will be a county board approved budget. Here are definitions. I know we went through them last year, but don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. All right, so here is how you calculate the tax rate. This is what you'll be approving with the per thousand of assessed value. That's how it comes on the tax bill, I should say, on people's personal property tax bills. And let's see here. And in the text box right there, you'll see how the information, how it's calculated with the formula, where you take the tax levy divided by equalized value, and then you take that time, multiply that times 1,000. To calculate the property tax levy, you really take expenses less revenues that we have, and when I say revenues, I'm saying, state aid, user fees or something like that, then the net is going to be levy. And in our system, Revenues and levy equal revenue, and then the expenses, of course, are the expenses in our software system. Here is a 5-year history of our tax rate, equalized evaluation, and property tax levy. And please note that, yes, our property tax levy goes up, but equalized valuation has went up more, so then that makes our tax rate go down. Okay? All right, here's a comparison of our property tax rate compared to others. Got this information from the 2022 County Fact Book published by Forward Analytics in conjunction with Wisconsin Counties Association. So you can see we're the 7th lowest over on the left-hand graph, on the left side graph, and over on the right in the contiguous counties, you're going to see we're the lowest. So quick, we'll go through the budget roles and responsibilities. The county administrator is required to provide a sales tax plan and a proposed balanced budget to the county board for approval. DOA, we prepare the personnel cost reports for the budget and coordinates with the county clerk to publish the budget summary in October. There's a lot of other stuff that goes in there, but we'll just keep it more vague. The department heads meet with their policy committees to review their requested budgets, and their budgets must be consistent with the strategic plan and budget instructions from the county administrator. Policy committees meet with the department head to review their requested budget, and reminder that the policy committee doesn't approve the department budget, but rather forwards the budget to the county administrator. The executive committee will be the committee for the departments listed above there, but they also have another role where they will get the whole county administrator's proposed budget at the October 4th executive committee meeting. And now here's your role. You're going to review and approve sales tax resolutions here in June. You're going to review and debate the county administrator's proposed budget. Remember, that will always be available starting in late September for the October meeting. You're going to make a motion to approve a balanced budget at the November 2nd county board meeting. And then you're going to approve a resolution adopting the tax levy at the November 7th county board meeting. So there will be 2 meetings in November. So here's just a budget timeline based off of per month. So in May, we start out here with me giving this presentation to you guys, and then Randy tomorrow will go and send out the budget letter to the department heads with budget guidance, and also the PCRs the preliminary PCRs will be provided for the departments. In June, DOA will look at those personnel changes requested by the department heads and prepare a final PCR to be sent to the department heads for them to use to begin that department head requested budget that they're going to provide to you guys at the policy committee level. And also in June, the county administrator will present the CIP plan along with the resolutions to you. And so in late June through early July, departments prepare their budgets and bring them to the policy committees for review. And remember, this is only the first phase of the budget. In August, we will be compiling the budget information and meet individually with the different departments about their budget. And also, the county administrator presents resolutions for new positions, health insurance, and wage increases for 2024. In September, the county administrator will share a preview of the preliminary 2024 budget levy changes by department. In October, the county administrator will present that proposed budget to exec committee. So remember, that's the second phase of the budget. And of course, we'll have it published in the Chippewa Herald. So I'll get a little more in depth here about November. I have it for its own slide because it's very important, because this is where you guys help out. In November, that first county board meeting will be on the 2nd, Thursday, the 2nd. At this meeting, it is a budget hearing where public may give comments about the proposed budget. And then what happens is Randy will give his presentation of the budget, and then the county board will debate the budget, and then you'll need to make a motion to approve the budget. And then on the following Tuesday is where we just have the adoption of the tax levy resolution based off of the budget that was approved the previous Thursday. So this is a new slide from the previous year's budget presentations. So we're currently in the process of migrating our financial software Springbrook to a cloud solution. So the reason we have to do this migration is due to security issues. So currently we're on a premise solution for our software, and it's at the end of life for security patches, and the version that we are on for Springbrook isn't supported by the newer servers. So we're not really given an option. We have to go to their cloud version. So a lot of companies are going this way. So we just wanted to make sure, I wanted to share with you, the county treasurer's office is having the same problem with their GCS program. The main thing I wanted to make sure is that for the 2024 budget, you'll see the current budget the way you have seen in the past. The 2025 is we're going to be on the new system. I don't know what that's going to be because our budget reports that we have right now, like that budget detail report, that is a custom report that we had built, and that will be gone in the new, once we go to the cloud version. The other thing we wanted to talk about was increased costs for software. Currently, when someone is going to get a premise solution for software, we're able to pay for the upgrades with sales tax within the ordinance because it is considered a capital asset with the premise solution, servers, because it's an actual buying space in the cloud or such. Now, with going to the cloud solutions, the costs aren't going to be considered a capital asset under our current ordinance language. So we're finding that with the annual maintenance costs are doubling from current costs also with going to those cloud solutions. So just for an example, I showed there right in the middle, our our financial software for Springbrook. Our 2022 maintenance was $50,815.34. It's for 2023, it increased to $87,159. GCS software, the maintenance when it was on a premise solution was $19,036.50. The new cloud version will be about $28,000. And also you got to understand the GCS, that doesn't include planning and zoning has a permitting module also. We don't know about that yet. They're not far enough in the process. So I just want you to understand that it just costs us more money to do business. So in DOA, we've been doing a lot of discussing about different options to help pay for this. Because levy is gold here, and we don't have a lot. So we're trying to figure out other funding options. So please understand this is very preliminary. We haven't really rolled it out, or we've talked about it a couple of times, but that's it. But we're discussing to have the option to use sales tax to fund those costs above a certain dollar value. I mean, it's still in discussion, but we can't maintain this and have, with all the different IT subscriptions that we have for a GASB 96, I would say we have about 125. And we just can't keep paying for these expensive things. I think initially Andy and I were thinking maybe 10,000 was the lowest that we would go before we'd want sales tax to kick in after 10,000 and have the rest be on the operating levy. But we're still debating. So I want you to understand this is very in infant stages, but we wanted to give you an awareness in case it comes up. We don't want you to be surprised. So if we did decide to do this, an ordinance revision would need to occur before this could even become effective. So we couldn't do it in the 2024 budget because it's too late, but it could be effective for the 2025 budget if we have a policy, a change in the ordinance, I should say, going forward. All right, I know I said a lot. Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to general reports, County Board Chair report. Last week, we had a truck come into the Sheriff's Department and our local employees who did a magnificent job of handling it. This threat was this courthouse was going to be shot up, the judge was going to be killed. We acted upon that, and the pieces of the puzzle came together, and when you realize we have a brand-new sheriff who probably has never seen the plan as to how to deal with that, and an administrator who probably never had a chance to read the plan either, yet it was almost followed to the T, is what I've been told. But the individual was apprehended, no one was hurt. And it came about because of our staff getting early notification, jumping in there, everybody pulling on the oars together. This is a great day for Chippewa County. This could have been terrible. And I have personally sent emails to these folks thanking them. So I wanted to let you folks know what had happened. And the good news is nobody was hurt, nobody got killed, and this is the way these things are supposed to end. So thank you. By the way, if you ever hear of one of these threats or whatever, if you see it or somebody does it to you, make sure you get these to the Sheriff's Department immediately. Again, quick response and being able to get in here, we were able to get this mitigated. Okay, we will move on to business items. Resolution 1623.
Resolution 16-23, resolution to declare May 8th through 12th, 2023 as Chippewa County Economic Development Week. Read by title only.
Okay, I would seek a motion to approve,
Hunt, motion to approve?
and then a second.
Bishop will second.
Okay, discussion.
We have Charlie Walker here to talk about the Economic Development Week. He promised to keep it under an hour. So
57 minutes.
5 minutes, that's perfect. Go.
Mr. Chair, board members, we want to thank everyone during Economic Development Week, aggressively, the staff, all our stakeholders, the community that worked so hard, as you can see, to move the economy forward. 2022 was a great year. 2023, I think, will be even better. And it's because we do have a great staff and a great team in economic development. And so this resolution thanks everybody and recognizes them publicly for their service. And we appreciate you guys too, because you gals too, you guys and girls, because you guys do a great job as leaders. So we appreciate it. Any questions on it?
Any questions? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, but Mr. Chair, I'm going to do something different.
Reserve those other 50?
That's right. If this, hopefully this will be approved, if we can get kind of a cute selfie from behind, we'll do some PR. We send this to the International Economic Development Council and they post it, and it shows we're still leaders in economic development. Appreciate it, if that's okay with you.
Not a problem. Okay, any further discussion? If not, then we'll call the vote. Green to approve, red to disapprove.
Everybody say hello. Excellent. Thank you.
18 yes, 0 no.
Okay, resolution passes. Then we will move on to Resolution 1723.
Resolution number 17-23, resolution to ratify county disaster declaration. Now therefore be it resolved that the attached April 20, 2023 county disaster proclamation is hereby formally ratified and the emergency powers granted thereunder shall continue while the emergency conditions caused by the flooding exist and until further noticed. Approved this 9th day of May 2023 by the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
Omar makes the motion.
Omar, is there a second?
Later, second.
Discussion.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so on April 16th, we had a flooding event. Obviously, it was a very wet spring and runoff. So we declare these out of the opportunity to possibly receive funds in the future for municipalities in the county also. So it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to receive them, but it gives us the opportunity to be able to recoup those funds. I did hear from emergency management today. It doesn't sound like any of the municipalities qualified, but there may be some for the county. So we may be able to recoup some funds.
Okay. Any questions or further discussion? Hearing none, then we will call the vote. Green to approve, red to disapprove. Am I going too quick?
No, you're good.
Okay, good.
Can I release?
Release.
18 yes, 0 no.
Then we'll move on to County Board Chair appointments, County Board Chair appointments, CVIC Loan Committee. We'll had an opportunity to look at them. I would seek a motion to approve.
Berger on motions to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Gil.
Any discussion? Seeing none, then we will call the green to approve, red to disapprove. Whenever you're ready.
18 yes, 0 no.
And ready? Okay. Number 2 is County Board Chair appointment for the Chippewa Valley Regional Airport Commission.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, Hull to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
McGill seconds. Any discussion? Supervisor Hull.
I don't know exactly how many years I've been on, but I think it's at least about 6 or so. And I would just like to recognize Rick Bovee, who is, I think he has a total of about 16 years on that board, who served a
Yeah,
long time.
long time. Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, then we will call the vote. Green to approve, red to disapprove.
$18 yes.
Okay. Approved, okay. Move on, number 3, County Board Chair appointment from the CEDC, Economic Development Corporation Committee.
Later makes a motion to approve.
Dave Flater to approve. Is there a second?
Fisher will second.
Bishop, second. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, we will then call the vote. Green to approve, red to disapprove.
$18 yes, 0 no.
Alrighty. Okay. Agenda items for future consideration in your email. You've got a survey, just to remind people to take a look in the survey. What's survey on?
I'll send a reminder.
You're going to send a reminder out?
Email was May 3rd.
Okay, so look back on your May 3rd, there's a questionnaire that they would very much like you to fill out and send back. So, other than that, if you have any items for future consideration you wish to bring forward, make sure you get them to me, and then we will get them on the agenda. And I will seek a motion to adjourn.
Erickson will make that motion.
Okay, Erickson is seconded? Peters? Okay. Okay, all in favor, press the green button. read to do.
18
We are adjourned.